Hello, everyone. I'm Devon Sanders, and welcome to another episode of Fantastic Forum, where today we're going to be talking about Superman and why he's still relevant and why he's still awesome, in my opinion. Today's guests are James Rambo, Brandon Hallmark, and Chris Peleo-Lazar. So I've been working in the comic shop a lot lately, and one of the big topics lately has been Superman. Why he sucks, I guess. Why he doesn't suck, what makes him good, what makes him great, is he still relevant? So I thought that we'd just talk about that. So I guess I'd start with James.
Yeah, the Superman sucks bandwagon is mighty large.
It's a big bandwagon. It's bigger than the Miami Heat bandwagon. Right?
And I think ultimately the simplest reason as to why people are not fans of Superman is, and I'm a huge Superman fan, there aren't a lot of great Superman stories.
Yeah.
I can probably count on both hands, like the books I would flat out recommend to people. And that's a shame.
But the great Superman stories are truly great.
Oh, absolutely.
really
The problem with Superman, truthfully, is that the same people who don't like Superman also won't allow Superman to change. And actually, Stan Lee, when he was asked which DC comic character would you never want to write, and he said Superman, because that's an inherently unflawed man. He's the ideal person that we all want to be. He's the Ubermensch. He's the Superman. And so you can't let him show flaws. You can't let him be a human being, which is what he ultimately wants. And you know, that's where the best stories have kind of developed out of, where you can see that being, you know, the most powerful being on Earth isn't all it's cracked up to be. But in order to keep being relevant, you know, these characters do have to reflect the changes of the time. They need to grow and learn and you know, and be put into different situations. When you don't let a character do that, then that character's going to suck.
I hear what you're saying, but when you first encounter Superman, he's very much of the time. He's a New Deal Democrat, and you know, he's for the people. And right now, you know, when you said that it has to reflect the times, we're living in very cynical times, and rightly so. There's a lot to be cynical about. But the problem is that with a character like Superman, it shouldn't reflect that cynicism. It should overcome it. And that's the thing, you know, a lot of people, I just don't think that they get that with that character.
Well, the key with that, though, because we're in cynical times, is his profession. His profession is essentially the cynic. He's a journalist. He's supposed to be that guy who finds the truth out there, who's fighting these forces out there that beyond. His power as his profession are supposed to be also mighty, and he's got this other job where he's saving the world. But in these cynical times, he can be that element of, he's the guy standing up for you.
I don't know. In terms of cynicism, there's, I think you get a lot of Batman fans from cynicism, and you get a lot of, and I don't think that's a recent idea. That's not a new thing. I mean, as long as I've been reading comics, I've always gotten flack for being a Superman fan because people just don't get it.
Right.
And I think a big problem there is Superman's a really difficult character to write.
Oh, exactly.
And you
Well,
find
how do you
so
write
many.
the perfect person when you're
Well,
not
see, that's
perfect
the thing, though. Like, who's the ultimate Superman villain? Lex Luthor. What can Lex Luthor do? Can he fly? Is he super strong? Can he do any of the things Superman can do? No. All he can do is outthink him and put him in morally ambiguous places and make him. There was this when Superman Returns came out. There was an Xbox 360 adaptation of it. There was a game of it. It's not very good, but they had one really great idea, which is Superman's health in the game isn't based on physical damage he takes. It's based on the health of Metropolis.
Oh, okay.
If Metropolis starts to get destroyed, if there's more crime going on, if people start getting robbed, your health bar goes down. So you have to go around and help people. And that's really the essence of the character, is Superman functions as a paradigm of good, and good people help other people.
Right. You know, that's very true, and that's the attitude I've always taken, is that unlike Batman, where Bruce Wayne is the mask, Clark Kent is very much Superman.
Yeah.
And, you know, when Superman goes out there, he's representing his mother, he's representing his father, he's representing
community.
Smallville. he's carrying all that with him. And I mean, in a world where, you know, everything's gotten bigger and it needs to be faster, I don't necessarily know if that still holds water with like kids who, you know, who I've got 9-year-olds walking in asking me for The Walking Dead, which freaks me out a little bit. But it's the reality that we live in.
And that's why the reality of what we live in is why Superman almost works better as a villain now, because that cynicism we see that perfect man. We want to see him taken down. You know, they even
why would
did
you
that.
want to see him taken down? Why would you
Because
want
it's
to take
much
the good
more
guy
interesting.
taken down?
It's in the new DC video game, for instance.
Injustice.
Injustice. Superman is the villain of that game. He is the arch nemesis. Now it's an alternate universe.
But
Superman,
it's also
but some
filtered
of
by the Joker, right?
Huh?
Isn't it? Or, okay.
That's a whole separate story on that.
Okay.
But
And anyway, some of the best Superman stories now are things like Superman Red Sun, where you can take Superman and make him kind of the villain of his universe,
Right.
and see what happens.
Okay.
Well,
Chris.
the idea of him being the villain is nothing new. We've had Dark Knight Returns. He's actually kind of the villain in that, and that's quite the legend. But you know what might be the best ally for Superman in this? I hope-filled characters actually across the board with Marvel.
Streaky the Cat.
No. Well, but always Streaky the Cat's awesome. But it's that the Avengers movies, the Marvel characters, are essentially optimistic characters. They're essentially, they're also overly perfect, too, as people. And those are really popular. And Superman is the pinnacle of that. The idea that there's a line in the preview, which I really like. It's something like, my dad always thought the world wasn't going to be ready for me. And then you just see, are they? And then he just walks up there. And it's this idea is, yeah, they are. The world could use Superman. There are times when, through all this and the world always needs Superman.
Well, and then to go back to All-Star Superman, which is,
Oh.
I mean, I'm not the biggest Morrison fan. Morrison, well, a lot of Morrison's comics read like he's been doing a lot of drugs, because almost certainly he has.
He has been doing drugs. That's right.
But with All-Star Superman, I mean, when you get it right, you get it right.
You just nail it.
And there's that issue where he makes the pocket universe and he has the little world. And
Yeah.
what does a world without Superman do?
Right.
They create one. I just read comics. I don't necessarily say I'm a DC fan or a Marvel fan or whatever. But if I have to pick, I lean more toward DC. And the reason is, when I got older, Peter Parker was still complaining about being a good-looking scientist with a model girlfriend.
Yes.
And the reasoning is, Marvel characters by their nature are the people that we are. Somebody said it's Marvel characters are man as God. And the DC characters are the characters we should strive to be.
Exactly.
They're the pinnacles. They're goals. So they're God is man.
Right.
And I just think that's a lot more interesting. People complain about Superman being unrelatable. It's like, how? Do you go out of your way to be a jerk?
Well, he is unrelatable because
I totally disagree
to
with
you,
that.
He is unrelatable because he's in a way he's kind of the ultimate immigrant story.
Yeah.
But
Right.
he's this thing that came out from outer space to come down and save us. And in some ways, Lex Luthor is right. We would be better off without Superman, because then we'd learn to take care of our own problems.
So to that I say, and here comes the controversy. Would we be better off without Jesus Christ?
Yeah, I'm not touching that.
I'm just saying.
I love that.
Because that's
good.
it's exactly.
Right.
It's Superman doesn't exist as like a vengeful god. He exists more as like an ideal of heaven. He's like, yes, you can be a good person, and there is something wonderful in just helping people. There's something just fulfilling about it. And how I relate to that
don't
character.
Understand one dimension. And when you focus on that one dimension, there are aspects of Superman that have other dimensions.
I wouldn't call it one dimension.
I mean, the Fortress of Solitude, for instance. Superman is kind of lonely, being the only
as he should
Superman
be.
around.
There's nobody
But
else
if-
like him.
When a writer doesn't focus on that, when a writer just focuses on Superman can punch Doomsday and
Well,
look
that's
how
just a
great
bad
he is.
writer.
And
Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's typically what happens. A lot of bad Superman stories. I mean, Death of Superman is very, very famous. That doesn't mean it's very, very
It's not,
good.
It's not very good.
You know, like the fact that the person that takes out Superman is just big, strong guy is just boring
Yeah.
and misses the point. I don't know. I think Superman can. I can relate to Superman. I don't think Superman can relate to us. And I think that's another problem. It's something that people don't really explore. And you mentioned the Fortress of Solitude, and it's like, yes, he is lonely because there's no one like him, even his own parents. And it's not a matter of like his powers. It's not a matter of like the fact that he can fly or any of that. It's that he understands good for its own sake is worthwhile. And to go out of your way to just hurt people and to be cynical, it's like, well, who does that help?
Not very human. Okay, and hold that thought. We're going to have an interview with Mark Waid, and we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, I'm Kim Poirier, and you're watching Fantastic Forum.
We're here at the Baltimore Comic Convention talking to comic writer Mark Waid. Although, I feel kind of funny just calling you a writer because, your contribution to comics has been so much more than that.
You're very kind. I've been an editor, I've been a publisher, I've colored books, I've lettered books, I've inked, I've done everything short of putting staples in the books, and it's been a long 25 years. But I seem to have acquitted myself pretty well by now.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, while we were off camera, I was gushing about some of your fabulous work. Notably Superman Birthright, Kingdom Come. In fact, tell us a little bit about Birthright. How did you, come up with that particular story? What inspired you to want to write that?
Honestly, it was the last line of the story. It was the last moment of the story. The idea. Spoiler alert: the idea that Jor-El makes this sacrifice, this incredible sacrifice, sending his son out in the void, not knowing if he lives or dies, not knowing if he made the right choice. Because really, is it better to doom your kid by letting him stay with you, or send him out in the void and not know what happens? No parent would want to make that choice. It's a horrible it's a no-win situation. So to be able to get the message back, but just before Jor-El dies, that not only did his son make it to Earth, but he grew up to be the greatest hero that world will ever know. That lets him go with peace. That's where that started. And the rest of it just filled in from behind there when it became, okay, well, how do we redefine Superman for the 21st century? What is the meaning of a hero in the 21st century? What does our readership think of heroism at this point? What's the point of view of a 20-year-old versus a 40-year-old versus a 50-year-old? Nobody under the age of 40 feels like they grew up with Superman anymore. We're losing sight of that. He's not to a lot of younger kids. He may as well be Woody Woodpecker or Betty Boop. That they're not as exposed to Superman. And so how does that? How do I write to that group? What do they care about? What do those people want to hear about Superman? And then Lineal, you, the artist, just hit it out of the park, and it's one of the things I've done that I'm most proud of. Superman has the potential to be the most lonely the most lonely being on the planet, because there's no one like him, and people would be so afraid of him under the wrong circumstances. So he's got to earn their trust. But more than that, it would be so natural for him to just hide his abilities and not want to freak other people out and want to walk among us as Clark Kent all the time and hide what he does because he doesn't want to be ostracized. He wants to be, because everybody wants to connect. Everybody wants to feel part of something. Everybody wants to feel part of society or culture. Everybody wants friends. Everybody wants to be loved for who they are. And so it'd be natural for Superman to hide, but at the same time, you can't really be a part of society. You can't really be a part of the world unless you're really embracing what it is that you do. That you can't hide your light under a bushel. You serve the world best by going full out with what you can do and the contributions you can make. And there are sacrifices that come with those contributions. And in his case, it's, their contributions are there are going to be people who are a little bit afraid of him, or the sacrifices are going to be there's some people who are going to be afraid of him. The sacrifices are going to be that there are, he's under scrutiny. The sacrifices are there's so much expectation put on him now. But the contribution is the important thing, because that's how you are connected. You can't, if you can run the 100-yard dash, you can't sit on the sidelines and then feel bad that you're not part of the team. You got to go out. You've got to go out. You've got to put yourself on the line. And to me, that's what a hero is that it's somebody who will put himself on the line to do what he can to make the world a better place.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. It's the Man of Steel versus Muhammad Ali. Based on the art of incomparable comics legend Neil Adams and sculpted with precision by Jack Matthews, this stunning work from DC Direct depicts the cover of the classic 1978 Treasury edition that featured the confrontation between these two titans. The hand-painted cold-cast porcelain statue includes a logo base and measures approximately 9 inches high by 9 inches wide by 6.5 inches deep. A remarkable representation of this classic comic book cover. DC Direct's Superman versus Muhammad Ali statue.
All right, and welcome back to Fantastic Forum. We've been talking about Superman, and one of the things that I wanted to touch on was Superman's recent relationship with Wonder Woman and how it affects his humanity, or thereof, lack thereof. So let's start with James.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Like so many of the things from the New 52. I mean, everybody wants the two of them to get together for some reason. And it comes back to just an inherent misunderstanding of the character, and just you don't get it. That's cool,
right? Well, when I was at the comic shop, the analogy I used was, what happens with Superman and Lois Lane is that Lois Lane shows Superman his humanity every time she comes around. Every time like he's feeling a little weak, you have this very human woman who says, "No, you're Superman. Rise up." And that's the message to me. That's what you want to hear. Whereas with someone like Wonder Woman, it takes Superman out of the realm of accessibility, where it's like, yes, I can be the geek. I can still get the girl. I can get the smart girl. I can get the pretty girl. And now, all you see is Superman now. It's basically when Superman gets with Wonder Woman, to me anyway, Superman becomes Brad Pitt and she becomes Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Wonder Woman, who is another character that is oft written poorly, is reduced to Superman's girlfriend.
Right.
Yeah.
And she doesn't need that either. Actually, one of my favorite scenes between Lois and Clark is from the Justice League Unlimited series. And they were closing out, I think it was their second season. They didn't think they were coming back for another one. So, Superman and the Justice League have kind of been devalued in the eyes of the public. And Lois is writing, a piece about how the world needs Superman. And Clark looks at her and is like, "Is that really what you think?" And she says, "Yeah, I've been really hard on Superman over the past few years."
Yeah.
And, that's just because he sets such a high standard for us. And somebody's got to keep him in check.
Oh,
and, he's
right.
only human.
But you
Well,
also want to me, that it's also something that you should rise up to. So, Chris?
To be slight devil's advocate, I don't
Okay.
agree with the whole Wonder Woman relationship there. But that said, there are a lot of people who don't follow the genre very well who always were curious. Like, why haven't they? How does it work type atmosphere. And I can see where that's coming from. It's still a terrible form. It's still a misunderstanding of the character. Lois brings out the best in Clark and in Superman. He makes him better as a person and as a whole person, because Superman's ultimately about family and the people around him. And if Wonder Woman's the person who's around him, that's not a coherent relationship. If you want to see Lois at his best, we always talk about All-Star Superman. It really is. That's a really good rendition of that relationship. And it makes it wholesome and yet extraordinary at the same time.
I mean, and what you get with Lois is you ultimately have you have a human being. She has a lot in common with Lex, wherein you have this human being who is smarter and is wittier and is quicker on the draw with regard to just having a conversation.
Getting herself into situations where she's going to die.
Well, certainly that. But with Lois, Clark can spar. Like it's not a tournament.
Right.
He can actually he can try and talk to her and try and keep up. And that's the thing. He can't keep up.
Right.
She's the most human he knows, barring his parents.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if they're completely different people. There's something special about her. She's able to, she's able. If he were Baryshnikov, she would be able to cop him from dancing. Like Lois is the one who can throw off his balance.
Right. Yeah.
The thing about the relationship with Lois is that we went through decades of really bad examples of their relationship. Like Superman, they had a comic. Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane was a comic for several years.
Long time.
The basic relationship that they had for decades was that she got herself in trouble doing ridiculous things, and he would save her. And that was over and over again. She barely a personality. The only personality you got out of her was that she hated Clark for some reason, which was never really clear. And so she was this, you know what? She really was an object in the storyline. And we only recently get to see her as a person. And for the New 52 to go and kind of dump that very quickly is kind of amazing.
That being said, if written correctly, if written with a new eye, the Superman-Wonder Woman relationship could work and could be interesting. But it's going to take somebody who has an eye for making something different and not just, these two people, perfect people are hooking up. Wonder Woman can stand up to Superman.
True enough, and she has.
And in the hands of a writer, somebody can take that. Some good writer can take that.
Well,
just like most ideas,
and
make
right
it,
on the head.
Make
I think
it
that
go
you hit the
somewhere.
nail right on the head where that story is only going to be as good as the writer who's writing it right now. Right now, with the writers that I'm seeing writing it, I don't necessarily have a lot of faith in it, but it could be an interesting thing. Okay, I do want to just move on a little bit, and I want to talk about expectations for the new Superman Man of Steel movie by Zack Snyder, the man who brought you Watchmen and Sucker Punch.
All right. I was very happy with Watchmen. Even if you don't like the movie, it was the best we were ever going to get from a film adaptation of that comic.
Okay.
And the other, Sucker Punch is the only movie he's written. It's the only one he's written, and it's easily his worst movie. But even with that, it is dripping with style. There's cool packed to the gills in that movie. But of the other films he's done, I've liked them all. I've left the theater
I love
in a
300.
good mood.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed them. And I mean, well, the fact that the first trailer, the first teaser, there was two versions of it. Same footage, two different voiceovers. And it's the perspective of here's Jor-El and here's Jonathan Kent. And their takes are completely different because Jonathan Kent is terrified of his son. He knows what he can do, and he's just like, oh, I hope we didn't screw anything up.
See, I have the opposite reaction. I think he is terrified for his son.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just my take on it.
I could see that, yeah.
In any event, I think we were talking early on in the segment about how Superman is all about optimism. I think we need to hold our candle of optimism toward this movie.
I agree with the Zack Snyder front. He's a faithful guy. Say what you will about him, he takes his source material very seriously.
See,
I liked Watchmen because
it wasn't a movie; it was a comic book interpreted into animation.
That's what we wanted out of it. I mean, that's all you can ask out of it.
That's not what the public wanted.
That's what
we watched
Watchmen
it
fans
tank.
wanted. That's what Watchmen fans wanted. Whether or not they say otherwise, that is exactly what they wanted. Any deviation, and what's the biggest complaint with that movie? Oh, the ending's so stupid. Why? Because he didn't have the awful vagina monster that shows up at the end of that
Can
comic.
you explain that?
So I mean, I get what you're saying. I understand. I've seen Sin City once. I have no interest in seeing it again. I liked it when I saw it, but it's like, yeah, I read that movie. I don't need to watch it again. But I'm sorry, Chris. You're saying?
One, we should have hope in this movie. And though he's faithful to his source material, this does look like it deviates. But he's also, we have to also give credit that he has oversight. He's got some good oversight. So he can't go too sucker punch on everything. It can't be too stylized. We're hoping it's the right chemistry. And if we're going to be about Superman, it's all about hope. We have to have hope in this.
Well, WB understands that if this Superman movie tanks, there goes their entire line of superhero movies, and Marvel's just going to continue to wipe the field with them with their movie house.
I know, it's amazing. There are no Wonder Woman movies in production, but yet Marvel has a movie about a space raccoon
Yeah.
that's about to come out.
Yeah.
Cracked did this
Yeah.
great fake script for Avengers. If it was 30 times shorter and 30 times more honest, and it ended, and somewhere in a corner the camera pans on a DC executive clutching Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman and weeping tears of blood.
Yeah, somebody lost their job when Avengers came out.
Okay, so just to wrap this up, if you had to say, okay, I want to show you what Superman is, what would you put in their hand?
Oh man, I can only pick one. Okay, so all right, so there was this Entertainment Weekly article about Henry Cavill, who's playing Superman in the new movie, and he said, "Oh yeah, I read everything I could get my hands on," and he proceeds to list a bunch of awful books.
Like
but
Red Sun, I think was.
Red Sun was one of them, which is a great read, but it only works if you have the background.
Okay.
Because it's a deviation, and because it's juxtaposition. And I would have.
Superman is villain.
Yeah, I would have recommended Secret Identity by Kurt Busiek and Stuart Immonen, Birthright by Lionel Francis Yu and Mark Waid, All-Star Superman, and there was one more. Oh, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way.
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
And Superman for All Seasons.
Superman for All Seasons, All-Star Superman, and Superman Birthright for sure. And unfortunately, that's going to be it for today. And we thank you very much for tuning in, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye.
Victory! 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 Victory!
Join the Fantastic Forum fan community on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for all the latest news and updates.